This is Newsroom. Hello and welcome from Johannesburg here in South Africa. I'm Eben Jansen. The show is live. It's broadcast from our studios in Auckland Park. We're also live on YouTube right now. That's where we're streaming with our whole show available on demand on our YouTube channel all of the time. Is there a cure for the Ebola virus? Is a question we'll ask a panel of experts as the UN asks for calm around the spread of the deadly disease. Then sentencing gets underway in the widely reported Griquastad murder trial here in South Africa. We'll get an update, and we'll also look back at the Marikana Commission after yesterday's dramatic testimony at that Farlam Commission in Centurion. First, though, Katrine Milan gives us a news update.
Well, hello and welcome to Newsroom. I'm Katrine Milan, and let's take a look at the top stories this morning. United Nations Chief Ban Ki-moon has urged governments to avoid Ebola panic and fear as he announced plans to step up the global response to the deadly Ebola outbreak and bring it under control, as the death toll from the outbreak topped 1,000.
We need to avoid the panic and fear. Ebola can be prevented. With resources, knowledge, early action and will, people can survive the disease. Ebola has been successfully brought under control elsewhere, and we can do it in here too.
Meanwhile, Transnet's National Ports Authority has rejected reports that a boat carrying people infected with Ebola is stranded at Richards Bay on the KwaZulu-Natal north coast. And United Nations Ethics Panel yesterday reached unanimous consensus that it is ethical to treat Ebola patients with experimental drugs to counter the outbreak of the virus. In the courts today, the teenager convicted of the Griquastad family murder in the Northern Cape will be sentenced today. The 17-year-old boy was earlier this year found guilty of the murders of Dion Christel and Martella Steenkamp on their farm Nauhoek in April 2012. The minor was also convicted of 1 count of rape and defeating the ends of justice. Over 200,000 registered voters in 25 wards throughout the 9 provinces will cast their votes in by-elections today. The IEC says out of the 25 vacancies being contested, 12 were as a result of candidates being elected to the national and provincial legislature after the May 7 general elections. The elections are one of the largest mobilization of voters outside of general elections. Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa has concluded his 2 days of questioning at the Farlam Commission of Inquiry. Advocate Darlene Mpofu, who is representing the miners, told the Commission that Ramaphosa should be charged for the killing of striking workers in 2012. Closing his cross-examination, Mpofu argued that Ramaphosa should have foreseen that his alleged pressure on ministers would result in the shootings. And then Arts and Culture Minister Nathi Mthethwa is leading a delegation to the United States to bring back the remains of anti-apartheid journalist Nat Nakasa. Nakasa left South Africa on an exit visa when the apartheid government refused to grant him a passport after he was awarded a Nieman Fellowship at the Harvard University. He died after falling from a building in New York in an apparent suicide in 1965. He was 28 years old. Remember, all these top stories are available on our Newsroom Facebook page. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Eben, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Katrina. Now, Ebola. Some have labelled it the new Black Death. The virus, which surfaced in West Africa a few months ago, has to date, claimed more than 1,000 lives. The epidemic, which has mostly affected Guinea, Sierra Leone and Liberia, is said to be the largest and most brutal in its history and has been declared an international public health emergency. The virus is simply a flight or ship ride away and not even taking into account illegal immigrants. The question is, are we doing enough to stop this virus from entering the country and spreading around the continent? Now, today we're joined by 2 experts, the senior manager at Aviation Medicine Department at the South African Civil Aviation Authority, Dr. Lesego Bogatso. Good morning to you. And then the head of Human Resources and Field Recruitment of Doctors Without Borders, James Kambaki, also joins us this morning. Thank you for joining us. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
James, if I can start with you and get the politicking out of the way around this, because there's always a certain level of politicking when we see so many people dying. This vaccine that's going for trials now, why only now, and why has only Westerners been treated with this vaccine?
I think definitely we welcome the new, drugs that is now being experimented. What Doctors Without Borders is actually saying, yes, it's important and it's very useful to have these drugs come into to use, but it's not the only answer to actually managing the outbreak that we are actually experiencing right now.
Yeah.
What we actually want to encourage people and especially the communities in those particular areas is to actually raise the level of awareness of the disease, because I think the best way to beat the disease is to know how to actually prevent yourself from getting it, and not really having to rely mostly on this new drug that is being experimented. We are still not very sure that this is the real answer, because the experiment has to still go on. WHO has already said it's now ethical to actually use it in those particular places, but we still need more answers. Can it be used for pregnant women? Can it be used for children? What are the dosages? And all these things come to question. Can it be produced in mass so that it can be able to actually be enough for everybody? Those are really the pertinent questions. But what we want people to know is that we have beaten Ebola in the past by making people know that how this disease is actually broken and the spread, and the humanitarian and international community to actually come in mass to actually support in this outbreak.
Dr. Bakhatso, you guys run most of the airports in South Africa, the Civil Aviation Authority. Just tell us, what sort of protocols do you have in place? You know, there's always mass hysteria around the spread of this kind of disease, and misinformation is obviously abound. But you do have protocols in place, don't you?
In fact, even the International Civil Aviation Organization, which is a UN agency, are responsible for standards and recommended practices for states like ourselves. South Africa is a signatory to ICAO, which is an international civil aviation organization. So there are annexes that are actually applicable from ICAO that talks to this issue in particular. So from a high level, ICAO is working very closely with WHO to make sure that there are measures in place. In South Africa itself, we do have regulations that actually talks to those annexes in place, starting basically with cabin crew, ensuring that cabin crew are actually trained to be able to identify suspected cases of communicable diseases on board an aircraft. We make sure that there are doctors back on board an aircraft, universal precaution kits and first aid kits. We actually make sure that there are procedures on board an aircraft to say if the suspected case is actually vomiting or they have symptoms and there's space on board an aircraft, that they could be moved to an isolated place. Allocation of bathrooms within the aircraft, communication of the pilot in command to the ATC on board an aircraft. So it goes all the way, and then activation then of the airports. You have to start there way before the aircraft actually lands in preparation for all the relevant stakeholders to be prepared when that aircraft actually lands. For example, designated ambulances have to be there. It cannot be just any type of ambulance that is there to meet the suspected case of communicable disease. Port Health Authority actually meeting the aircraft, designated hospital, and it has to be obviously a hospital that will be able to isolate that particular suspected case. So you have to actually prepare. And our regulations and procedures talks to that all the way from cabin crew up to handing over to the Port Health authorities. At the moment, we actually have an MOU that is at its final, where we actually signing an MOU with Department of Health to actually define the roles and responsibilities of the Civil Aviation Authority and where the Department of Health actually take over. In terms of how we're dealing with the airports at the moment, we've actually identified high-risk airports, 5 of them, OR Tambo International, Cape Town, Lanseria, King Shaka and Kruger National.
Yeah.
And what we've done is that we have actually now going to conduct inspections. We've started already with the inspections. We're almost halfway to conducting inspections to make sure that measures are in place and all the stakeholders, because the program includes many stakeholders,
yeah.
It's actually very easy to slip. So we have legislation, we have procedures in place, but we actually go in there to make sure that each person is aware of what their roles and responsibilities.
Yes. That is a mouthful you've just shared with us. It looks like we have a plan and we're starting to implement the plan, which is the good thing. But let's go to the situation on the ground, James. I'm very concerned that, Guinea's now closed their border and it seems that the people are a little bit cooped up in the West African states that have been flagged as the high-risk areas. What's the situation on the ground? What are your doctors telling you?
I think what we hear now is because we have quite a huge number of staff. I think over 670 staff we have already mobilized to actually work on the Ebola in those 3 countries. What they're telling us now is that the situation is still not under control. It's a bit chaotic in some countries. I think the governments have come forward to actually put even state of emergency in some places so that you can actually control certain movements.
Yeah.
But the thing, there's a lot of panic right now because everybody is afraid. Your family is affected. You don't know what to do with them.
Yeah.
You have already had some rituals and ways to actually dealing with the death, but now we are actually telling you to change and to do something else. So there's a situation of panic right now where everybody wants to actually keep themselves alive.
Yeah.
People are so emotional, so you don't think straight in such certain situations.
Yep.
So we need a lot of people to actually pass this message. The tracing is not very well done, so that you can actually cut the transmission. The isolation wards that we are running in all those 3 countries, because we have a 60-bed capacity now that we are putting in Liberia. We have already managed so many cases in Guinea, and we have an 80-bed capacity in Sierra Leone. This is a drop on the ocean. What we actually ask is that all this Ministry of Health and all the other international actors to actually put isolation wards in all the hotspots so that people can actually be treated there, because the MSF is not able to actually handle all these numbers that is actually
more
coming
resources
up.
are needed
More
in the short
resources are
term.
needed.
And while this miracle drug is supposedly on the horizon, but that's still months and months away, and we could lose many, many lives.
But we still have people, actually 30% recovery rate in these isolation wards. So it's not really a lost battle completely. It's something that could actually be done.
Doctor, if I can come back to you, there's always concerns, especially now at social media, people can voice their concerns. One of the things that they've asked us is to ask you, what about pilots flying to and from West Africa? And then also, if you can tell us, what are the procedures that passengers go through when they're traveling from West Africa to South Africa right now?
At the moment, there are no travel restrictions as we are aware. However, our public health authorities like Port Health are actually on high alert. And our cabin crew, we continuously actually providing them with information. We have been meeting individual airlines that actually fly to West Africa to actually conduct training to alert them about the symptoms and signs, so that if there is anything, they should actually provide information to us. So basically, regular updates with regards to the developments from WHO, International Air Transport Association, International Civil Aviation Organization. But also from our side, we continuously send alerts to industry because we in close communication with the National Department of Health. So we are continuously communicating with industry to provide them of the latest developments.
Have we ever dealt with an epidemic of this kind of proportions, and also the kind of threat that we see this could pose to the wider world in your experience at Doctors Without Borders?
No, I think this is the biggest so far. We dealt with Ebola in Uganda and also in Democratic Republic of Congo. where it was actually managed quite with, of course, there was also deaths there, but not as high as this. Because this is the first time that it's also affecting 3 countries, and actually 4, including Nigeria, for the first time. So it's the biggest.
Can I respond to that? In fact, Hong Kong, during 2003, severe respiratory syndrome, SARS, it did actually happen. And what happened during SARS, the industry that was mostly hit was actually the aviation sector. There was no preparedness plan. There was panic. There was knee-jerk response. And following that incident, WHO and ICAO decided to actually come up with a program called Collaborative Arrangement for the Prevention of Communicable Diseases through air travel. That's the CAPSCA program. And what this program actually aims to do is actually ensure that the global community, aviation and health, are actually talking together to put measures in place so that business can actually continue and all the stakeholders know what their responsibilities are. And this program actually came into effect in 2007, and it's currently actually global. So it has actually happened before during SARS. It was not in Africa, of course, but we have actually learned from that experience. So
there's no need for panic. We've got the situation well in hand on the ground at the moment, and if anything happens, we're prepared. That's from Dr. Lesego Bogatsu. He's from the Civil Aviation Authority, and then Doctors Without Borders this morning, James Kambaki, who's the head of Human Resources and Field Recruitment. Thank you for joining us and giving us a little bit of an insight as to what's happening on the ground, but also what people shouldn't be hysterical about those things. Am I right? People need to be prepared because hysteria is not going to help anything. So we need to have preparedness plans in place. We can never avoid it completely because of the incubation period. Yes, however, we need to have preparedness plans in place. Thank you very much once again for joining us. Now let's take a look at some of your views on social media with regards to what is happening with the Ebola virus in West Africa, and also then, of course, the kinds of fears that we are stirring up. Sinikiwe Butelezi says this is too close to home, scary. Ebola scare off Richards Bay, of course, that was the hoax that was widely reported yesterday. It was amazing that some of our radio stations would actually run with such a story, that a boat full of Ebola refugees are off the coast of Richards Bay and that we are in danger of all of us catching it. Then Aubrey says, people are calling me and asking if they're going to get Ebola in South Africa. Europe is closer to the current hot zone, says Aubrey. Antonio Bonillo says, no Ebola in SA, says the National Institute for Communicable Diseases. Thank you for that sober one. And then Retro Haas says, East Africa is not so far from South Africa. This Ebola thing got me paranoid. Don't know why people take it lightly. Well, we are not taking it lightly. Amani says, scare in Richards Bay, South Africa. Let it be a false alarm, please. Yes, it was a false alarm and very unnecessary, one would think. Then the Department of Health, we ask members of the public and media to be cautious and stop causing unnecessary panic. That's reported by Lon Mwabo. Yes, reports of an Ebola boat parked off Richards Bay. It's just way out there. Let's take a look at what the front pages of The World says today. Now, the South China Morning Post is reporting on the World Health Organization giving the green light to the use of experimental drugs to combat the Ebola outbreak in West Africa. Yes, we all agree with that. Then the Miami Herald is looking at Iran joining the U.S. in support of Iraq's new Prime Minister, Haider al-Abadi, and the Daily Telegraph in Australia paying tribute to actor Robin Williams with a front page picture of him there. Those are just some of the top stories around the world, some of the newspapers, what is concerning the world this morning. Let's take a quick break. This is Newsroom on SABC News.
RAV4 Coupe. One with the machine.
You can't have a gut feeling about other people's gut feeling.
Ngaba has continued the tradition of passing stories onto the next generation using a platform that offers stories to a far more greater audience.
Zombie no go unless you tell them to go.
This is what the audiences all over the world knew Fela Kuti for.
Join Musa Mkhalipi on Afro Showbiz every Saturday at 19:30 CAT.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News. Now, a sentencing is expected to begin today of a 17-year-old boy convicted of killing Dion Steenkamp, his wife Christel, and their daughter Martella on their farm Noak near Griquastad in the Northern Cape in April of 2012. The minor was also found guilty of raping Martella and defeating the ends of justice. Now, for the latest, let's cross to our reporter in Kimberley, Ulrich Hendricks, who's standing by with an update. Good morning, Ulrich.
Hi, good morning, Eben. Well, in just under 15 minutes, Judge Frans Homer will start the final chapter in this tale. He'll be delivering the sentence for the minor accused. The Court B here in the Northern Cape High Court in Kimberley is already packed with some of the families of the deceased. And then, of course, there's a huge media interest in this case. So really packed. Everybody is just waiting for Northern Cape Judge President Judge Homo to basically start delivering his sentence. Just to take you back, during mitigation and aggravation of sentencing, the state asked that the maximum sentence be imposed on the 17-year-old accused. That is, of course, 25 years for each of the murders, another 15 years for the rape, and then, of course, the charge that he was found guilty of defeating the end of justice for lying to the police, another 10 years. So we're looking at quite a hefty sentence should the judge decide to impose the maximum sentence.
Ulrich, you talk about, I've got Jacques Steenkamp with me in studio, the man who wrote the book on this case and who works with us and yourself. Just tell us quickly, you say the court is packed and there's high expectation, but what's the reaction of the local community there? They've been very active and very involved and interested in this case over the years. It's finally coming to an end now.
Yeah, there's a huge interest, to see the conclusion of this case. We went through Griquastad last week, and people are actually anxious to see the conclusion of this case. They feel that it's an unnecessary highlight of their town in a quite negative way, and the smallness of that town, the family, the uniqueness of that town, that people felt. The murders, they really felt the impact of those murders on their personal lives. So it's been 2 years where people are looking forward to the conclusion so that they can basically start dealing.
Now, this young man who stands accused of this triple murder, he's got a lot of support there in the community. People don't believe that this young man is capable of this crime that he's been found guilty of.
Yeah, well, it's still divided. There are some people in the community that actually feel that he did kill the Steenkamps, that he also was responsible for that. Then there are other supporters like his guardians, some of the family members, other community members who feel that he did not commit the murders. He himself still maintained to this day that he is innocent of the crimes that were brought against him.
Ulrich, thank you for joining us today. I'm going to carry on here in Johannesburg with Jacques Steenkamp. Thank you for an update. I'm sure you'll keep everyone updated as to what's happening at the courtside there today. Ulrich Hendricks, of course, you can also follow Ulrich on Twitter. It's at Ulrich Hendricks, and he'll keep you updated as to what's happening minute by minute in this trial as judgment has just commenced in the High Court there. Now, the man who's been very close to this trial is Jacques Steenkamp. Good morning to you, Jacques. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks.
I think it would be appropriate to go right back to the beginning and your experience that when you got the call, this is now one of the biggest murder trials. But just run us through that process. When you got that call, right back to the beginning that night on the No Hook farm.
Yeah, basically, one of my sources let me know what happened. But if you look at the crime itself, it was very gruesome. I can tell you about that more.
Yeah.
Basically, it was Good Friday, the 6th of April. The 15-year-old boy went horse riding with a 14-year-old Martella. They came back home. They had a massive argument. He admitted to that much in court, at least. They had an argument. He couldn't recall why they argued. They went into the house. According to the state, she wanted to tell her parents about the sexual assault, that he sexually assaulted her.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she was in the lounge with her father on the couch. The mother was in front of a PC. He went into the main bedroom, fetched the revolver. He walked into the lounge. He shot Christelle through the back. She fell over. Martella jumped up. He shot her through her right chest. He couldn't get another shot off because Dion was storming towards him. So he shot Dion twice as well. Dion fell over. Martella ran out of the house, out of the kitchen, and he fired another shot, but he missed her through the door as she went out. By the time he chased after, he found her outside. He didn't have any bullets left in the revolver. So he started like assaulting her with the butt of with a rifle, over a revolver. The revolver was covered in blood. She has defensive wounds all over her hands. Her head is totally bruised. So the theory is that she lost her consciousness. Yeah. He returned to the house. He went to fetch the .22 rifle. And by that time, she stumbled back into the house. There's a whole bloody trail of her movements going into the house. And she actually managed to pick up the receiver of a telephone. You can see the bloody handprints on the cupboard and on the receiver. But she didn't manage to dial for help because before she could dial, he shot her again. And he basically executed each three of them in their heads with the rifle.
It's a horrific story, really. Just then take us on to the investigation, because this was seen as a farm murder, another brutal farm murder initially. How did the 17-year-old then become a suspect in this case? And then maybe how this kind of news affected that community then?
Yeah, I think it comes down to good police work. The boy ran into the Kriegelsstad police station about 13 minutes later. He was covered in blood, and his biggest mistake was that he handed over the firearms to the police, saying that he picked it up, they were discarded. Now, in most farm murders, the people normally, the attackers, they normally leave a weapon. They would go there to fetch the weapons and take it with them to commit further crimes. I don't know any farm murders where they left the weapons behind, especially discarded by a gate.
Yeah.
That was one of the mistakes he made. But he rushed into the Kriegelsstad police station. He told them that he was, the three Steenkamps, Dion, Christelle and Martella, they were all shot. It was a farm murder. They must come help. So he ran in there. The police guys rushed out. He actually washed himself with water, washed all the blood on his hands and feet. But the later Colonel Dick de Waal from the Hawks, his investigating officer, he showed up at the scene, and he basically saw there were scratch marks on the boy's neck, but his one nostril was bleeding. So he could see the signs that a struggle occurred.
Yeah.
For the first 3-4 months, the police kept all the media in the dark, but they didn't really say much. They just said they weren't looking for any suspects at the time. So we basically had to go investigate the case ourselves and discover what was happening. But about 4 months later, he was arrested and charged with the 3 murders.
There we see the scratch marks on the boy's neck and so forth on a Still's photo. Very interesting. Now, he was found guilty of these murders, rape and lying to the police. Taking all of this into account, what's your expectation from the sentence, and also thinking that the boy is still was underage when the crime occurred, and how that will affect the outcome?
Basically, Judge President Frans Gomo, he's very strict. He's a very great, amazing judge to watch in action. The state prosecutor advocate, Hannes Klute, asked for 95 years. That's basically 25 years for each of the murders, 15 years for the rape, and 5 years for defeating the ends of justice, which is quite a hefty sentence. And I think Gomo will probably sentence him in that kind of framework, because he didn't show any remorse. He didn't give his cooperation for the police psychologist, and that's so. I think the boy and his supporters are still relying on the coming appeal. They don't really care for the sentence. Yeah. But if that fails, he's going to spend a very, very long time in prison.
It certainly looks like that. Jacques, thank you for joining us. If we can just have a look here. This is the book that you wrote, The Kriegelsstad Murders. It's now available in leading and all very good bookstores.
Afrikaans in English, yeah.
Afrikaans in English. A tragic story, really, but a real story of that really has its footprints in the new South Africa. It talks about farm murders. It's got all the intrigue in there.
Yeah.
The courts being the court is always in South Africa in the spotlight when this kind of trial goes on. So if you want to read the book, Jacques Steenkamp wrote The Griekwestad Murders, in detailing everything in that really gruesome triple murder. Thank you, Jacques, for joining us today. Again, of course, sentencing procedures are underway in Griekwestad, and Ulrich Hendricks is the man that is at courtside. He'll keep you updated. Don't forget you can follow him at Ulrich Hendricks on Twitter. He'll give you almost to-the-minute updates as to what's happening courtside. Let's take a look at what you're talking about, what you've been tweeting about, what's happening on social media. Guys, put up a couple of comments. Let's see what people are saying about these farm murders in Griekwestad. It is a triple murder that really polarized a community. Okay, well, we don't have those comments yet, but on an interesting note, this week, more than 100 years ago, the world's last quagga died in a zoo in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. The quagga had once roamed the pastures of the Karoo and the southern Free State here in South Africa. It differed in appearance from other zebra in that it was striped on the front half of its body only. The extinction of the quagga was brought upon by aggressive hunting by the settlers at that time. A team of South Africans have been working since 1987 to recreate the quagga by selective breeding from plains zebra stock, aiming to eventually reintroduce them to the wild. This project has been highly successful, with Henry, the most quagga-like foal so far, being born on the 20th of January 2005. That is our day in history. We're thinking about the quagga today. True South African story. Time for a short break. This is Newsroom on SABC News.
M4 Coupe. One with the machine.
Zoom into Africa. This is Namibia. The president is Mr. Hifikepunye Pohamba. Namibia got independent from South Africa on 21 March 1990. The population is over 2 million people. One of the major languages spoken is Afrikaans. Monetary unit is the Namibian dollar. Zoom into Africa. This is Gabon. The president is Mr. Ali Ben Bongo. Gabon got independent from France on August 17 in 1960. The population is over 1 million people. One of the major languages spoken is French. Monetary unit is CFA.
Welcome back. You're with Newsroom. Let's take a look at the top stories this morning. United Nations Chief Ban Ki-moon has urged governments to avoid Ebola panic and fear as he announced plans to step up the global response to the deadly Ebola outbreak and bring it under control as the death toll from the outbreak topped 1,000.
We need to avoid panic and fear. Ebola can be prevented. With resources, knowledge, early action and will, people can survive the disease. Ebola has been successfully brought under control elsewhere, and we can do it in here too.
Meanwhile, Transnet's National Ports Authority has rejected reports that a boat carrying people infected with Ebola is stranded at Richards Bay on the KwaZulu-Natal North Coast. An United Nations ethics panel yesterday reached unanimous consensus that it is ethical to treat Ebola patients with experimental drugs to counter the outbreak of the virus. Then in the courts today, the teenager convicted of the Griquastad family murder in the Northern Cape will be sentenced today. The 17-year-old boy was earlier this year found guilty of the murders of Dion Christel and Martella Steenkamp on their farm in April 2012. The minor was also convicted of 1 count of rape and defeating the ends of justice. Over 200,000 registered voters in 25 wards throughout the 9 provinces will cast their votes in by-elections today. The IEC says out of the 25 vacancies being contested, 12 were as a result of candidates being elected to the national and provincial legislatures after the May 7 general elections. The elections are one of the largest mobilization of voters outside of the general elections. Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa has concluded his 2 days of questioning at the Farlam Commission of Inquiry. Advocate Darlene Mpofu, who is representing the miners, told the Commission that Ramaphosa should be charged for the killing of the striking workers in 2012. Closing his cross-examination, Mpofu argued that Ramaphosa should have foreseen that his alleged pressure on ministers would result in the shootings. Then Arts and Culture Minister Nathi Mthethwa is leading a delegation to the United States to bring back the remains of anti-apartheid journalist Nat Nakasa. Nakasa left South Africa on an exit visa when the apartheid government refused to grant him a passport after he was awarded a Newman Fellowship at the Harvard University. He died after falling from a building in New York in an apparent suicide in 1965. He was 28 years old. Remember, all these top stories are available on our Newsroom Facebook page. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Evan, back to you.
Yeah, thank you very much again, Katrina. Now, preparations for the second anniversary of the Marikana massacre, scheduled for the 16th of August, is well underway. This week, a host of activities are being arranged, leading to the main commemoration rally on Saturday, the 16th. Sigala Sonke in Marikana, a women's organisation, will today hold a Speak Out symposium reflecting on the Marikana massacre and how the events of that day have impacted their lives and their community. Now, for an update, Selo Tatai joins us from Rustenburg this morning. Good morning, Selo. Thanks for joining us again.
Good morning, Ivan.
Selo, let's start at the Marikana Commission of Inquiry, where we've seen a very heated and interesting couple of days with Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa on the stand. What has been the reaction there on the ground following the dramatic 2 days that we've seen?
Well, obviously, Ivan, there has been some different reactions into the testimony of Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa. But here at Marikana, people were very much critical with his testimony, saying that he was very much evasive, in his answering of the questions that were put to him by lawyers for the mine workers who were killed on that fateful day, and obviously the lawyers for their families. And that sentiment was also echoed by one of the figures who was instrumental in bringing about peace here at Marikana, Bishop Joe Soka, who was saying that the testimony of Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa did not help the Commission with anything. In fact, he was saying that Cyril Ramaphosa, as a former trade unionist, who could have helped in trying to bring about an end to the strike in 2012, which consequently led to the killing of 34 mine workers on the 16th of August, saying that as a negotiator, he could have brought both AMCU and NUM together around the sitting table to try and find a lasting solution to what was currently happening by then.
Selo, now this is a big week. We've got lots of commemorations happening as the second anniversary looms over the weekend. Just give us a quick indication of the sort of program that's going to be happening there over the next couple of days.
Well, interesting programs indeed, Devon. Yesterday we saw the Sikhala Sonke Women's Forum, which was holding a symposium here at Marikana. It was founded in 2012, immediately after the massacre, to help the widows deal with their loss. But since then, it has evolved into what one might say is now a civic organization. Rather, it is now concentrating on helping these women to be economically active and to try and help them overcome some of the socio-economic challenges confronting them on a daily basis. They have now a vegetable project, a piggery project, and also a daycare center. But over and above that, they were very much critical with their living conditions, saying that they feel largely ignored by government, in that for the past 2 years they haven't seen any improvement in their lives. They have not seen any improvement in their living conditions.
What about AMCU, the union that's really central to everything that's been going on? Are they planning any commemorations, and how and what sort of shape and form will this take this week?
Yes, as you rightly put it, Devin, AMCU, the strike of 2012, which claimed the lives of 34 miners, gave rise to AMCU here at the Platinum Belt. And obviously they are part and parcel of this commemoration, and together with organizations, NGOs, which have been doing some work here at Marikana. So on Saturday, it will be a collective effort, in a sense, where we are going to see AMCU, the NGOs, and your Rihad Desai, who has produced and directed a documentary called Miners Shot Down, holding that commemoration on a Saturday. But obviously, there are some political parties which have been frequenting this particular area to garner support, and many of them very much being critical about what transpired here on the 16th of August in 2012. You remember that last year, government and the ruling party did not attend this commemoration. We only saw opposition parties attending the commemoration in numbers. Whether that was ahead of the elections that we saw this year, it's neither here nor there. But coming this Saturday, we are expecting all those parties, your AMCU and your Lonmin, to be a part of this particular commemoration. It will be interesting, though, to see whether government will attend.
Senator Tai, thank you very much for giving us an update as to what is happening on the Platinum Belt. Of course, this week, 2 years ago, 34 miners lost their lives. The week before that, 10 other people died. 44 in total, the number of people that were killed during that fateful week. This week, it's the 2-year anniversary. Now, do you know what colour accounting is? If you don't, Katrine Maland will give us a quick update and an idea about what this is all about.
Well, thank you, Evan. Yes, close to 3,000 learners in the Western Cape benefit from a new approach to teaching accounting. Colour accounting, Accounting Comes Alive, is a new graphical way to explain accounting using diagrams, colour and plain language. It was developed to address the difficulty that many people face when trying to understand accounting. The whole idea is to free South Africans from the fear and uncertainty caused by financial illiteracy. Accounting teacher Colleen Hodge and Erica Mutang, a founder of the leader of a human skills development company, Eliel Consulting and Coaching, are in studio with us today. Colleen, Erica, welcome to Newsroom.
Thank you.
Colleen, I want to start off with you. Just take us to the classroom. You are an accounting teacher. What are the children faced with today with learning accounting, and what are their major struggles?
I would say that the most difficult thing for the learner is the language, the jargon, as we would call it, the accounting jargon, and especially for learners that are not learning it in their mother tongue. So that's one big challenge. The other challenge is that it is difficult for the children or the learners to see the whole financial story and see the bigger picture, because they can't relate it to their lives. So very often it becomes boring and repetitive, and you need to be having to work very hard at undoing that issue of the children not understanding the bigger picture.
Now, Erica, Accounting Comes Alive. How does it, in simple terms, address these issues?
Okay. Accounting Comes Alive basically comes from the point that everything you learn, if you can see it. Now, with accounting, people even to learn it. what they did is come up with a simple and graphical way of teaching accounting. So it uses color, diagrams, and storyboard. So instead of just learning numbers, you can actually do accounting.
Accounting comes alive. You guys brought examples of the work. Can you guide us through it? Tell us more about what you brought into studio today and how this will even teach me accounting.
So every person, every child or learner would get a pack, and it really is lovely because at the back it says set yourself free, because many people find it challenging and nerve-wracking, so you set yourself free, and every person would get a pack with their, we call this the basis framework, and their storyboard, and in the storyboard are little buckets which the children have to be making.
Hold it up there, so. And there you've got it set up right there.
So they will get a flat bucket, which they then have to make, which is very exciting. And they have to make the buckets, and they'll also have a little book with tickets that they will be using when they're actually doing the transactions.
Okay, so just explain to us how this is differing, the old and the new way. What are the major differences as we're seeing it here in front of us?
Okay. Accounting is not like the same way. This one was done so that it could help enhance how we are teaching accounting. It differs because now instead of just using columns, we now use blocks. So it's 5 boxes and it's 3 different colors. So every color has a different meaning. Like if you see yellow, it's sources of funds. If it's green, it's uses of funds. If it's purple, it means profit. So because of these different colors, and then even when you're talking about different accounting concepts, one is able to link them to different colors, which means that it stays in the learner's mind. They'll always remember if it's green, it's assets and expenses. If it's yellow, it's liabilities and it's equity. And if it's purple, it's profit. So they are able to visualize the concepts as well. And with the little buckets and the storyboard, instead of just learning, they actually do transactions.
Now, thousands of learners have been benefiting from this in the Western Cape. What are the plans of taking this elsewhere in the country?
Okay, that's why we're here. In the Western Cape, the government there, they've adopted to the Department of Education to use this. So there's a number of teachers who have already been trained as color counting teachers. And they also use the same concept in class, not inclusively, but to enhance the training. And we are here to say, look, of course, with our department, we still have challenges with finances and all that. We're here to say there's another way that can help boost our accounting. That is why we're here.
And the program is not only applicable in South Africa, it's also something that can be used worldwide. How do we compare with the world when it comes to accounting?
Well, in South Africa, we are taught accounting in schools. And many countries don't offer accounting at school, and that's one benefit in South Africa. So even if you're doing accounting at school and you don't want to follow a career in accounting, you're coming out of school with a huge skill. And this colour accounting enables the learner to really understand how business works, because the whole basis is on a business story.
Now, it's all quite simple, but why are we faced with this challenge of the majority of people being, financial illiterate over the years?
Okay. First of all, learning finances is fearful. Where most people are terrified to learn. If you say numbers, we don't want to learn with it. Unfortunately, we still have to learn. We still need to learn because we play with finances, we use money all the time. So it's how it is taught that's intimidating. It's the fear also that people do not like it. So that's why people are not really encouraged to do that. So it's through color accounting that people get actually the sense that it's not that terrible. And accounting is not just for learners, it's for everyday life as well.
Would you like to add anything to that?
I also think that the learners are able to be involved in the work. So from that point of view, they take that skill out of the classroom, and many of the learners that I have taught, their parents have run little businesses, and they've come back and really shown how it's benefited them.
And just lastly, costs involved in this program, and how can people become involved?
Mm-hmm. Okay, because we use it for different markets, so there is different costs involved. Because we use it for private as finance for non-financial managers. We also use it for SMMEs, so the cost differs completely different to the schooling ones, which also Colleen will speak more on that.
Mm-hmm. So in the Western Cape, the Marshall Foundation have actually sponsored the learners. Peter Frampton, the the CEO of Colour Accounting, has adopted the school side for his give back. So the funding has to come from NGOs, because although the Department of Education have endorsed the program, obviously they can't fund it. So the idea would be to find more funding to put it out there, because we're working a lot with disadvantaged schools in the Western Cape. Not all, but a lot are. And for example, we've rolled it out at Hilton, and obviously they would pay more, but they have really found that their numbers are increasing because of the enjoyment of playing the game.
Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us this morning on Newsroom. It's Colleen Hodge and Erika Mutang talking about colour accounting. Accounting comes alive, making it easier for all of us to understand accounting. Now, Evan is standing by with some of our comments that sent in this morning. Evan, are you there?
Yes, I am indeed, Katrine. Thank you very much. Very interesting. If it was made available during my time at school, I'm sure that I'd be lined up properly and that I'd probably have a proper job, as my mother would call it. That's why we call it quits. Are we doing comments? Are we looking at final line of comments this morning, Flo, or not? No, we're not. Newsroom is broadcast. Well, there we go. Happy International Left-Handers Day to all my fellow left-hander friends out there from Arundel Pino. National Left-Handers Day today. Seems every day is a different day. Actually, every day is a different day. Tweet for Cause Nepal says everyone is born right-handed. Only the greatest overcome it. Happy Left-Handers Day today. So if you're a left-hander today, feel special. Keep left and carry on. That is another one on National Left-Handers Day. Happy Tangamberak Day. Happy Left-Handers Day. Left-Handers Day is being celebrated all around the world. If you are left-handed, today is the day that you can feel special. Be kind to your left-handers, left-handed friends. It's International Left-Handers Day today. They say the truth is always stranger than fiction. That's where we wrap it today. Newsroom is broadcast to you live from our studios here in Auckland Park in Johannesburg. We repeat at 2 in the afternoon with a repeat at 5 o'clock the following morning. Also, we're on YouTube all of the time, so you can watch us on demand there on our YouTube channel. This is SABC News. You've been watching Newsroom. We just love it in the morning.